Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tectonic Lounge. Today with us is Derek, all the way from the lovely Ontario. How you doing, Derek?
Good. Yeah, I'm here in Toronto.
So Derek is a designer and CEO at DVXD, a company that we've had a chance to work with on a major project just a couple of years ago. Feels like a lifetime ago because it was before the pandemic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does feel like a lifetime ago. I found out just quickly, Serge, before we get into it, that work was in the Philippines. I think we can reference the work that we did with
Yeah.
the incredible Maria Ressa, global press freedom advocate, CEO of Rappler, Nobel Peace Laureate, which is crazy to think wasn't a Nobel Prize winner when we worked with her. But I found out a fun fact the other day that flight that we took from Toronto to Manila is the longest non-stop flight that leaves out of Toronto, 17 and a half hours.
I believe it.
Yeah, and it was painful at the time, but looking back, it was totally worth it.
Yeah, our flight was a little shorter to get to you guys, but yes, it was also worth it, and it was a fun experience. And we've collaborated things on several things since then. So Derek's experience again is with design, and we wanted to talk a little bit today about this idea of co-design. I think it's a powerful concept. We're getting kind of in my mind in, shall we say, participatory experience of creating products where we're going away from the old thing of you just hire a designer, they give you the product, you hire a developer and they give you a product, to where people who own the product, people who actually have the idea behind it, are much more involved. So, Derek, why don't you start us out with this whole thing? Just how would you define co-design and participatory design, and where do you see the trends with that going?
Yeah, so the way we define co-design, I don't think is, incredibly complex. And I should back up and say, what we've learned about co-design, which is effectively just bringing more people who are impacted by the outcome of the work into the design process, really has been, for me as a designer, and I think our peers and, the team that we have at the studio, more of a re-education. We a lot of us came from various backgrounds. Specifically, my field is in user experience design. I studied computer science, not too far here from Toronto at the University of Waterloo. And technology is something I've always been, just obsessed about, and how it really can improve people's lives. And the stories you get told about how things are made and designed and brought to life, whether they're from sort of a technology perspective or a design perspective, is, you hear about these monolithic design companies, whether it's, Apple or IKEA or Nike from a product design side, or you think about great tech stories as well. And they're always sort of, there's an understanding there's a group of people behind it, but they're kind of told in these really singular ways, right? And what we've learned is over the last few years, really through the lens of kind of like of social justice, that design is inherently social. The things that we create, whether the stories are about an individual designer or not, behind the scenes, it is collaborative foundationally, right? So co-design really is design to me, one and the same. But the broader kind of capital C co-design that we're talking about, or wanted to talk about today, is really being more intentional and transparent about how that process becomes more participatory. So our studio, we're just over 6 years into building the studio, and you mentioned we've collaborated together. For me, the studio has always been an experiment into exploring how do we bring more of these social practices into our design methodology, and really challenging some of the ways that people do go about designing products, designing brands, designing services, and inviting the people who are, sometimes kind of informing the process through their research inputs, or stakeholders who you interview in the outset, really into that process, and have them be ultimately participants and contributing to what they'll, eventually impacts their lives.
So digging a little bit deeper, I think you mentioned earlier when we were talking before the recording this idea of giving people a voice, right? So that it's not just a fait accompli that they're getting like, here are your design, here are maybe your 2, 3 options, you get to pick. And then obviously if people have a voice, they tend to have more ownership and more excitement in even promoting that product and the brand.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said earlier, I talked about the lens of social justice. There was a lot of things, and there's huge threads of stories I can tell from many perspectives about why we formed the studio. Just generally, we wanted to pursue a way where design singularly hadn't just become about like how can we make users' lives easier. We thought we had honed this incredible process. I think we had got to what I think is sort of like the peak of user-centered design in the like Amazon buy now button, right? So it's a magical thing. You press, something's at your door. I think in the US, even it's within a matter of hours. Here in Canada, it still takes a day or two. But, how frictionless, how almost magical, right? And now we take it for granted and it's an expectation. But you think about all the things that have to happen behind the scenes for that to work. You think about the labor that's involved. You think about the energy output that's involved and potentially how, compounded, how wasteful that all of that is and exploitative potentially all of that is. And I'd like to think that to me was the kind of peak moment for just quote unquote user-centered design. And a lot of us started to see, well, this is actually problematic. As we start to scale this, is there something more that we can pursue, this idea of socially centered design where we're not just thinking about organizational goals and how to make people's lives easier, but we're thinking about the broader impact. And as we started to think about how do we solve like that question, how do we even step into thinking that scale, obviously you go to research, you go to history, and that's when a lot of things, a lot of text, a lot of work that had already been done that goes back decades that discuss like participatory design as a way to have that perspective that you won't have as a biased designer, practitioner, engineer, product manager, whoever is involved in it. And we work in professional services, so thinking about our clients as well too. It's really building on that idea of user-centered design, of inviting people not only into the process to hear their perspective, take their insights, and then try to craft something that works for them and test it and refine it, but really more meaningfully bring them into saying, okay, let's solve this together. And I think that's where, to your point earlier, you allow people to have a voice in that process. And at a time when there is more focus on things like, the climate crisis, and here in Canada on Monday, September 30th, where we have Indigenous Truth and Reconciliation Day. It's a big movement in Canada initiated by the government and Indigenous communities to work towards Indigenous reconciliation. How do we bring in communities who aren't normally part of the solutions that are meant to solve their problems into solving it? It seems very basic, but it's not. And there's a lot of factors as to why that doesn't happen.
Okay, well, look, we're focused on finding that intersection of business technology. So I want to get into chew on this just a little bit more, because if I'm a business person and let's say I've done a product before and I work with design team and I work with development team, I'm asking myself hearing this, okay, well, how is this going to be different? Because last time we did this, we had UX study done. They talked to our users, they talked to our stakeholders, they gathered up the data, and they gave us recommendations. And then when they delivered, mock-ups, the wireframes and everything else, we still gave input. So that's not new. That has existed, well, as long as I've been in the tech industry, which is getting close to 3 decades now. And so that part hasn't really been reinvented. What makes co-design or participatory design go deeper than what I just described, the initial UX studies or feedback on, wireframes and mock-ups?
Yeah, I mean, I think you articulated it right there. The kind of existing models we have are really just more feedback loops, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say even in the design community, there's a lot of friction around the idea of co-design and participatory design. People conflate it with this old axiom of like design isn't done by democracy, which I actually challenge that as well from what we've seen and what we've practiced at our studio. But it is more than feedback loops. It's actually creating, structured activities where people can feel like, one, their guard is down, that they're able to contribute, that, people feel vulnerable in these situations sometimes when they aren't quote unquote a designer. But we start by reminding people that, in the world that we live in now, the number of choices that we get to make every day, we are designers of our own lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, that I think as well as some, activities we run with folks who lets their guard down, but then we actually get into things like, ideation through sketching, through illustration, through concepting. I want to emphasize this is beyond a lot of like sort of the design thinking era that we went through. There is a great quote from one of the partners at Tentagram, and I'm going to forget her last name, it is Jen, but she said once at a talk that I went to that, there is no design thinking without design doing. And so that's what we're talking about here is actually getting people into the design doing. Like we're talking about creating an app. What does that app look like to you? Show me on a sketch or a virtual canvas. Let's draw it out. Let's talk about it together. Let's look at references that you've seen, and why they're important to you, why they think they matter. And then also inviting people into sharing kind of their experiences, their own personal experiences that maybe aren't conversations that usually happen in those stakeholder interviews or that kind of user research, because people I think can become inspired by their own life if they are made to feel comfortable that that is valid qualitative data, right? We kind of in a professional setting tend to think, oh, we're talking about this problem, the strategic problem, this is I need to put my work hat on. But often, like if we get people to open up about their various backgrounds, their identities, their cultural experiences, there are things that unlock creativity and innovation. And I think it's not rocket science. It's really just we've been honing the kind of mechanisms and activities, and also trying to make this fun. We did a lot of this through the pandemic where everybody was virtual, and most of it is still through Zooms. So yeah, I would say there's a lot of intentionality behind the ways we've invited people really into the design process. And there's probably more examples I could give you.
I feel like it's kind of fun to hear because in a way you are taking a risk, right? Because in the paradigms that I was describing earlier, where you have the interviews and you have the feedback loops, you can very much control the narrative, right? As the person doing the interview, the way I
Yeah.
was listening to somebody say, if you ask the question is, what are the negative consequences of this? Well, then you immediately are looking for negatives, right? You're not saying, well, is this negative or not? Or, hey, how do you feel? How does it apply to different experiences? And so on and so forth. And I also do appreciate what you were saying. I think living in an apartment complex where several apartments are the same, and we are talking about this growing up, we only had so many choices, right? Especially growing up in the USSR, there were like 3 design sets. But I was amazed, went over to the neighbor who has the exact same layout apartment that ours does, and it looks completely different because it's very different style. She made different choices there, different kinds of pictures on the wall. Just even the way furniture is arranged is different, even though we actually have the same furniture in many ways. So I do find the fact that removing the old statement of designers should be doing design, let the professionals do the work, and letting people who are actually creating this and who have lived different experiences than what the designer may see, and maybe are one step closer to the end user of the product, right? So if you're designing an app, not only is it an app that matters to you, but most likely who the end user is a lot more than the designer knows who the end user is. And I think you
Yeah.
may have a better understanding of those goals.
Yeah, and I think what's happening, and maybe this is a tangent, but like the rapid evolution that we're seeing in language models and also things like augmented reality, which is a little bit further out, but all of these things are what is sort of shortening the distance between everyday people being able to bring their ideas into life. There is a dependency, and I think there will always be a dependency on particular skill sets. And, you need people who understand how to engineer products, who know things like security and technology and design, who know things like layout and color theory and all of that. And I'm certainly not advocating for a lot of these, sort of generative models that are just kind of producing mostly trash. But there is a shortening of the distance. I think we're going to continue to see it between what I can imagine as, just a layperson and the thing that I want to create as, even if it's sort of like rough around the edges. And I think us as practitioners, whether we're technologists or designers, we have to figure out where do we fit in that model, because I think the economics of it, there's going to be a lot of people who want to chase the shortcut, right? But if we value our craft, where do we fit? How do we contribute? How do we work in that model? Because for people, it's going to be very exciting, to sort of see, like we have Shopify here in Canada, a big tech company,
Mm-hmm.
allowed a lot of people who want to start their own store, retail business, launch their own product. They created a platform that allows millions of people to do that. The same thing I think is going to happen in general with these technologies that allow people to get an idea into reality. And I think it's a great thing in one aspect. You have more people participating in that. And I think there's also obviously challenges when you talk about quality, when you talk about potential copyright infringement, things like that. So this to me is all like the broader discussion of co-design, right? As more people get to participate in these processes.
Well, I'm going to do a little promo within this. You gave me a perfect line here. For those interested in the legal issues with the modern, including AI use, and specifically, we actually addressed legal implications of what if your AI creates a visual that is already copyrighted or infringes on intellectual property. An episode that launched this week is with a Canadian attorney over in Alberta, I believe, who specializes in some of these things, and he talks about some of these issues and how to protect yourself as a company when using AI from being, well, especially in the United States, in the poorhouse after being sued or something to that effect. So check back and listen to the episode with Greg. He did a really good job explaining some things for us. Okay, so I'm seeing almost like two diverging paths that you mentioned in this last piece is, on one hand, you could have almost the glory, winning the Webby Awards for design or whatever, being the front end, the person who gets the credit for it, not necessarily the user. On the other end is people who are using, let's say, AI to create the complete design of it. But I'm seeing what you're describing, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, is the users, Raymond Hillary, climbing a great achievement there with the mountain. And you guys are the Sherpas, right, who are guiding him along and making sure he's taken care of. He has supplies, the technical knowledge, the expertise to get through. But at the end of the day, it's his name that appears on that because it was his idea and his, funding and his whatever project. It's not as much about the designer who created this fancy thing. So you're almost finding this, you're giving up a little bit of pride, a little bit of glory from being the one who conceptualized it from the beginning to end. And you're also not going, as you said, with the trashy way of just going with something like let AI generate it and whatever it's going to be is going to be. And you're adding the expertise to the internal customer knowledge, to the owner knowledge, and then creating what perhaps is not going to be simpler by any means, but it is a shortcut on some level. You're shortening distance, as you said, but it's not simplifying the process, but the result will likely be better. Am I correct on this?
Yeah, I think so. I do like the Sherpa metaphor. I think the other piece of what you said that you touched on, where you said it might be slower. I think that's the other thing where if there are criticisms of this way of working, right, and people would be surprised to know we actually work with a lot of startups, right, who move at an incredible pace, and we have ways of making those processes inclusive and still kind of respecting the goals of the founders we work with, right, to get to product market fit and to be able to scale. But if you think of the grander sort of idea of like, how can we make these really incredible products? You're talking about initiatives that are like years long, right? So we talk about the iPhone, or we talk about, I don't know if you have it in the States here, but McDonald's has this thing called the McGriddle.
Yes.
Yeah, you have a McGriddle too, right? Took 7 years to figure out how to make the buns for the McGriddle, right?
Yes, because it has the M branded in there. Yes.
It's not just the M, it's about how the maple syrup can be infused in there and then eventually getting to this idea of maple syrup crystals. Now, I'm not advocating for unhealthy food in any way. It's probably diametrically opposed to a lot of my values. But my point is, if great things like that, we can tell these stories where it's like, oh, it took all this time, then why can't we have that same rationale for why it's important to have participatory design, right? And I'm talking like large scale projects now, right? We have massive infrastructure, have projects happening here in Toronto right now, whether it's transit, it's a lot of transit projects that are happening. And, for the most part, they do not include the community. And they've been actually harming a lot of communities that have had to be shut down. I'm a big fan of public infrastructure and public transit, but the way in which it's been approached has been, again, that idea of that singular vision or a smaller group of people. And there's always this fear where it's like, well, we're the experts, we're the civil engineers, we're the designers, we're the political bureaucrats. We know best. And yes, we'll hear from the community, but we'll just go ahead and do what we think is best. And I have so many challenges with that approach from what I've seen at a smaller scale. But the work we've done, it's been much more economical, much more efficient, much more creative in terms of like the diverse perspectives we have when you have people come in who aren't day-to-day designers, VPs, engineers themselves, we often think discount how important their lived experiences and their shared experiences. And then, ultimately at the end of the day, these are the people who are going to be your users who you need to adopt these systems or buy your product. There are so many great product stories, I think, that maybe are unheralded, that they are successful because they build with, not just for people. We use the tool we use day in and day out, and a lot of people use for digital product design and engineering is a tool called Figma, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Figma started out at a point in time where they were way behind the curve in terms of the modern tooling that people were using. And their ascension and eventually kind of dominant place in the market really happened because they were very entrenched in design communities around the globe. And their roadmap was effectively
User
dictated by
driven,
designers,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, saying, hey, this is what we need. It helps that you're working with designers. But I think there are so many more products out there, so many great stories that are maybe unheralded. Maybe it needs a Netflix documentary about about all the stories of co-design that maybe we don't even know were about co-design.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You brought up public transit, and I immediately think about, I don't know if you read much about the Los Angeles public transportation system and the story of how it happened and the corruption involved and everything else. But I remember meeting with somebody long ago who used to work for the city of Los Angeles, said, we held public hearings, but it was also, you have choice A, choice B, and they mostly surveyed the neighborhoods who are not being impacted by having to travel to work on public transit. And they're actually saying, well, I don't need a route to go from here to Beverly Hills or whatever, stuff like that. But at the same time, they didn't look at the people who were going to work in the houses of the wealthy and then you need to take the bus because they couldn't afford to drive or something like that. And, they listened to the oil companies and the petroleum producers and realized they built a system that is highly non-functional. Having lived in California, having lived in New York City, I can pick which one is a bit more efficient than the other. I think the challenge
Yeah,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
just to cut you out there quickly, just New York also, you talked about how efficient it was. I mean, there was a point in time everybody knows, like a lot of people know the story of like Robert Moses, the notorious,
Yeah.
urban planner in New York, and how he tried to put a highway through what is still
Central Park.
now
Yeah.
the village and yeah, Central Park. And that was stopped by a community group led by a Canadian, J.J. Jacobs. I think there's a lot we can learn from these civil projects that are at a much, larger scale and much more complex than some of the, not to discount the work we do and the work we do with our partners, but like you're talking about digital systems, that's a much different scale than public infrastructure that's going to affect millions of people's lives over decades. And here's a community group led by one woman who just said, no, it is not a good idea to put a highway through here. And I know my friends in New York would complain about the state of the MTA in New York right now, but it's still incredible compared to many, many places in North America.
Or the world. Yeah. No, I think there's a lot. I will go back to the business side of things and say that there's an impatience in the startups. And I think sometimes startups will take shortcuts and say, well, it's good enough. We don't need to worry about going deeper. But I think there's a bit of a misnomer that I've run into in the business world where startups think that they have a risk of dying if they don't like iterate really, really quickly, while most startups fail when they try to scale and they don't have a solid foundation. So if they had a proof of concept that worked, but they didn't test it out and their broad audience wasn't considered and they didn't get enough input, when they start scaling, all of a sudden it fails and they don't know why, it's going to cost them more in redesign and redevelopment of it, right? As opposed to taking the time to front load and make sure. Look, the beautiful thing about design, even what you and I did in the Philippines, there are things that you guys designed that didn't get implemented until 2-3 years after the fact. They were great ideas that they don't need to exist in phase one, phase two. Maybe they're for phase three and four, but they're at least being considered. And as you mentioned with Figma, they're in the roadmap. And I think that that's a powerful thing, is where you also as a user see, okay, this is what's coming. I'm excited about it, and the roadmap is actually not just, let's say, board driven or idea driven, or it's not just marketing. We got to throw in the word AI in there somewhere and make sure whatever it is works, right? But I think the
Yeah,
people get excited about using a product. I think ClickUp, the one we use for project management, was built the same way, with the project
that's
management community in mind, and honestly, people who didn't like things like Jira, for example. So
Yeah, and why wouldn't you? I think that's the biggest message to businesses is right, build with your customers, right? It is a fast track to success. I think a lot of people, and maybe the design community, capital D, is responsible for this, they're contributing to this, or other consultancies where they kind of interject themselves and say, well, we're the experts, we'll help you get to that right product. But we are always about, making sure your customers, the communities you impact are at the table. And, not everybody buys that process, but I will tell you the times that people haven't, they've ended up having to spend, like you said, that money in making it right. Like I think the other day I said to you, and I don't know who to attribute this quote to because it's not mine, but nobody has the time to build it right, but everybody has the time to build it twice. It's the same thing. Like you don't take that opportunity that you have. There are always, I think, if you've got a really great idea, chances are there are going to be people who are really excited about that idea too. And they will be your, product managers. They will be your advocates in terms of going to market and scaling. Invite them into the process and really give them agency. And it's challenging, right? Because a lot of people think about the startups, and again, the startup stories we tell is what there's this visionary founder who had this incredible idea and did everything they could to bring it to life. When you really peel back the layers of stories like that, you start to see that there was a collective of people who worked, and worked closely with the communities they were building something for, and then they created something great together. Yeah, I always think about, I have a friend who's a huge cycling fan, like Tour de France and stuff. And I was, just talking about it with him. And I said, what are things that people in the West, maybe, who I think now cycling's become more popular, but even in the era of Lance Armstrong, he's like, yeah, most people don't know that Tour de France is a team sport.
Oh yeah.
The idea of like a peloton and stuff, maybe now they know. But even then, like I'd venture to guess most people still think of the Tour de France as like an individual sport. And so I think the same thing goes for your coach of football. When we talk about co-design, I'm really talking about just, understanding the work we do as a team sport.
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship is a team sport, very much so. In fact, and the MIT training that I've done for it specifically talks about it, is there's no way, no matter how amazing you are, and yes, sadly, a lot of entrepreneurship books and training is the solo designer, solopreneur, whatever comes out. And I pulled myself out by my bootstraps and did all this great work. But the reality was, in most cases, you were never alone. Jeff Bezos was not alone. Bill Gates was not alone. On and on and on. We can keep going. But I would also say this is, I think it requires taking some of the ego out of it, right? And it requires saying, you know what, I am not the greatest expert in every single facet that my product touches. And I think it requires a certain self-awareness to say, you know what, we together are going to be better than I can do alone. Yes, I will go faster by myself, but we'll go farther together. It's the old quote, right? So I think that's very
Yeah,
powerful. Okay.
yeah, I hear you. Like the whole idea of this sort of singular vision, and that's great for art, I think. But we're not talking about making art. We're talking about design, which is ultimately changing things for the better, and that can't be done alone.
Art by its nature is not functional. However, what we're talking about designing here, products, services, they're functional. They actually serve a purpose beyond visual appreciation or appreciation itself. Okay,
Yeah,
so we can't avoid this topic. It's 2024, so we have to talk about it because you already dropped AI a little bit into the conversation and we kind of hinted about it. So we obviously know AI is growing. It has positives and negatives. We've done at least 7 or 8 episodes where AI prominently featured in the conversation. How do you feel the fact that AI can create, let's say, a front end design for a product amazingly quickly? And you mentioned you used the word trash earlier on some of the generative stuff.
yeah, it's still early on, or it's what's troubling is how opaque it is. I think somebody said the other day it's ironic that OpenAI is called OpenAI, given how
Yes,
opaque
it's a
it is.
black box.
And hey, we try these tools, we use these tools. What I was talking about was with trash. That is probably the first, second, cycle of these things. Obviously, these things are going to get much more sophisticated in what they can create and begin to sort of emulate or mirror something that was handcrafted. And I think that's we as practitioners have to figure out, like I said earlier, where is our place in all of this? Because I think, we definitely don't want to advocate for systems or tools that are infringing upon individual creators' work, right? And making sure that people's works are appropriately attributed or that they have agency in defining that, whether they're work can be, used in these training models. Unfortunately, it sounds like with what OpenAI has potentially done, it's allegedly is, really just open up these models on anything, copyright be damned. But I think we also can't just sort of take that position and not also look at this technology as really empowering a lot of people who didn't have that opportunity before, right? I mean, it used to be at a time the stuff that we ship today needed whole internal or hosted IT infrastructure, staffing, all this like pre-cloud era, all that stuff. It was like impossible for anybody to even think that they might ship something, on their own with a small team. And so, yes, there are tools out there that probably will be able to create front end systems, design systems. They're probably leveraging a lot of the work that's been done by human hands to be able to have that level of intelligence. But it is going to be pretty powerful for a lot of people who, don't typically get access to those resources. So it's a larger question that I don't think, many of us necessarily have the answer to, of how do we feel about that and how does that evolve our role. I think right now the way we employ AI is really just, how do we shortcut a lot of like monotonous tasks and create more. What we're trying to do is actually create more space for creative thinking, for that facilitation, for the time it takes to bring more people into the process.
Let's spin to the positive side of AI for a second. Within the tools that you use, and specifically the tools that you would think that not somebody who's a design specialist, but let's say a business person or even a tech person, are there tools that you've seen useful, and what do you see them like? Is it great as a starting point? Like in a lot of writing creation, I've heard people say, even on our webcast, before I write something, I'll let AI take a first crack at it, and I go, "Ooh, that's a great idea," and I'll run off of it and do more. Have you seen tools like this, or are you using tools like this that you can recommend?
I mean, I probably don't use anything that people haven't already used. Like, I definitely have been using Claude a little bit more than like ChatGPT, for example. I find, exactly that, where I don't necessarily let it write the first draft, but what I will have often is notes, whether they're handwritten or typed somewhere in some note system, just like allow it to sort of break that down, theme it, and then from there I can craft, a story around it. I think storytelling is still really important that we do, from human perspective, right? You don't want to lose your own voice. Like these models can certainly, work with very simple prompts around your tone, or you can kind of feed it things that you've written before to kind of get your tone right. And it's pretty remarkable what it can create. But I think that's the agency you don't want to lose especially when it comes to narrative. So like proofreading, things like that, that's great. I've tried out Cursor AI recently, and which has enabled me to get back into coding. I started out as a developer, and the fundamentals of development are the same, and the sort of models of like model view controller and all that stuff. But like the frameworks, obviously over time have changed. So that it's like I think AI really is about ultimately translation for people, right? Whether it's literally translation or it's about helping people, who know, like they have a sense of what they want to do, but there are these like syntax gaps in a way from them to be able to get from A to B, right? Like not knowing modern web architecture. There's an idea I had that I wanted to build, and I think it is about getting to first ideas, better formed first ideas. But then from there, I still think there is a place for specialists to come in and help you hone those ideas. Which is, going back to our co-design methodology. I think one of the things I wanted to make sure that I clarified is like we're not asking people to come in and ship software, define a brand system, develop like a communication strategy, execute like a service design strategy. We're inviting them into the ideation process and the concept process. And then there are people who are experts in their craft being able to take that and bring that to life. So it's the same thing to me with AI. Like I think it's still a lot about first principles. But for many reasons, even if you look at it from a safety perspective, right? Are you going to ever have an AI model craft like a civil engineering plan for like we're talking about
Maybe
roads
not.
and public earlier, and then ship that? You're not. That's not going to happen. But you're probably going to shorten a lot of that initial process through some of these tools.
Yeah, I think that's been a common denominator in every conversation I've had on this show and even outside this show. AI is, let's not ship anything until a human expert has looked it over. I think there has to
Yeah,
be a final step review, validation, tweaks, adjustments, because otherwise, and again, it is a shortcut, but it's a risky shortcut if you don't validate. So,
yeah.
okay.
I'll give you
Yeah, go
because
ahead.
we've been speaking in broader, I think terms. I'll give you a tangible example of where we've introduced AI into our product, or into our processes. So we're big on accessible design, inclusive design. It's really important to I think our practice and I think accessible design is universal design. In when we're shipping, web projects and stuff, there's a huge focus on, web content accessibility guidelines and doing those audits. One big part of that is the ARIA label definitions, the alt tag definitions.
Mm-hmm.
All previously were done, meticulously by hand. We've started doing batch processes now where once we do that initial like load of content into a CMS for a site that's being shipped, we'll run images through an AI model to draft the alt tags, and they're actually doing a way better than humans who are coming from a sort of a bias. You're saying you have sighted users say creating these alt descriptions for people who
Right.
are on-sighted users. Well, the AI is actually doing that better because they're actually following the guidelines correctly and describing these images more accurately. It's still being reviewed by a human at the end of the day, but that's a tangible example where that process has become like it's a 10x
Right.
impact.
And even from just a very basic perspective, this is not the first example this I heard. We talked about some of the DAM users with the asset management to create all the keywords and descriptions, saving you a ton of time. And there's a fatigue within the human mind to keep doing this over and over and over. So if you're uploading 500 images a day, you exhaust it if you're trying to create it. It's much easier to proof it, and so it's a lot easier to validate and so on and so forth. Okay, well, we can keep going for another hour or two, but I think we're going to wrap it up. What I generally do at the end is if there's anything you want to share as far as kind of where you guys are working. I know that I've admired DVXD for your community involvement and your overall vision, and your team overall seeks to offer representation and consider various viewpoints. Overall, what's your kind of a wraparound? Let's try to keep a positive message for the day for folks listening.
I mean, just sticking to this theme of co-design, I think whatever you're doing, are you trying to tackle something maybe more individually or with a smaller group? Is there an opportunity to bring other people into what you're doing? In general, removing that sort of guard, I think that people might have, you'll see huge benefits to the outcome of the work you're doing. Yeah.
Collaboration can bring on amazing results. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if you're inviting people in who aren't typically part of the process, but are going to be impacted by what you're creating. So find those people, bring them in. You'll be surprised what they have to say and how much it'll improve what you're trying to develop.
all right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Another episode of Tectonic Lounge. Thank you, Derek, for being our guest. We look forward to everybody coming in for future episodes. And for some of you who may have come in the middle, we have close to 2 dozen episodes now. Some of them covering AI, design, product management, many other things that impact business and technology. Check in and check out some of our past content as well. If you have any feedback, feel free to leave a comment or drop us a note. There's an email on the channel as well. Thanks again for listening.